It's October, which means it's a requirement that I look at least one zombie game, right? So I decided on Zombi, a game that I've owned for a while and I'm finally getting around to playing. Yeah, I know, I say this a lot, but it is what it is. The premise of Zombi is that it's your typical zombie slaying FPS. What's kinda different with it is that you play as a single character for each playthrough, and if you die, you take control of some other hapless survivor trying to stay alive in the undead-filled streets of England. Granted, I haven't yet died in Zombie, but I really like the idea since any replacement heroes can slay the turned prior character and take their gear. In addition to playing as these random survivors, there is an overall story arc at play, with some doomsday prepper saying that he is tracking your movements over CCTV, because of course he is. You also meet up with a scientist from a secret English group that gives you additional objectives. The scientist feels that he can find a cure for this disease by researching the works of a man named John Dee, so of course that's a good chunk of your missions. Truth be told, I didn't finish the game, so I don't know how it finishes. Why didn't I complete it? Well, the game just didn't hook me in. Let me slow down and explain why. Combat is primarily based around smacking zombies in the head with a cricket bat or shooting a basic pistol at their brains. 95% of the time, I was using a melee weapon, as the undead are slow, dumb, and don't really pose a huge threat. It is rare that you ever have more than one zombie attacking at one time, and even when you do, the other zombie is usually far enough behind that you have plenty of time to use the first corpse as a piñata before you have to deal with its friend. It just doesn't make for a very interesting zombie slaying game. There are a decent amount of weapons that you can find in the world of Zombie. There is a heavy emphasis on looting various objects and dead undead, with the camera often shifting focus into a third-person view when looking in cabinets and drawers. The thing is, most of the time these containers are empty, so if you decide that you want to look everywhere, which you should just in case ammo is lurking in these containers, it's going to slow down the momentum of the game even further. Another odd thing with the weapons, or more specifically, the firearms, is that they aren't really all that fun to use. There are no iron sights, so zooming in will simply zoom the camera slightly, much like many pre-ADS style shooters. That's not a big deal, but even more oddly, the sound effects for the firearms seem to have a completely different volume level than the rest of the game, as in much lower. Usually when you are playing a shooter, you want to hear the guns going off. You aren't going to have that here though. In addition, ammo is so scarce that you'll probably be saving your ammo until you are getting into a perilous situation, which isn't very often. The thing about this is that the game actually wants you to use guns. You have upgradable skills that go up in level as you use each weapon, as in non-melee weapons. If you kill, say, 15 zombies with a pistol, your level will go up with the pistol. I only ever had this happen once with a pistol, and no other weapon that I've obtained got a level up. So is it really necessary? I'm not entirely sure. Oh yeah, the fact that there's a lot of loot that you can find? Well, the items come in the forms of wooden planks to board up doors, flares to attract zombies to a location, various explosive devices, and some food and health packs to replenish any health lost. But your backpack has a very limited space available, as in 14 spots. At one point, I had 4 weapons, a health pack, and ammo for each. So that restrains what I can take with me. You can head back to your safe house by using various manholes to fast travel. In the safe house, there is a chest that you can access to drop in any unused items. But even this is limited at 30 spaces. At least the early Resident Evil games, of which also have a limited inventory, give you a box that has nearly infinite space available. You also can't use items right from the container or corpse that you are looting from. So if you see something that you want to use immediately, you have to drop an item if you are full to use the desired item and then pick up the dropped object. One thing that I found kind of disturbing is the main character itself. He sounds kind of psychotic when he's killing zombies. Granted, I don't know if any other characters have other voiceovers, but I was playing as some pharmacist and he laughed every time I struck a zombie in the head with a bat. Sure, you get the normal strained yells, but that laugh? I guess you gotta find humor in dark times, huh? I will say that the game is very dark, especially in the beginning of the game. You do have a flashlight, and although the battery drains, it recharges quickly, so running out of power isn't much of a threat. In addition, the flashlight has a high beam mode, but this doesn't seem to add much illumination as opposed to the standard beam. Either way, the flashlight helps, but the game still feels like someone turned down the brightness setting on the monitor or TV to the lower ranges. To be fair, this does help lead to the overall sense of dread that you run into in Zombie. You always have to be aware of that zombie around the corner, even if they don't pose much of a threat. There was one attempt at a jump scare that I ran into, although I really expected more in a game like this. You cannot jump manually, instead needing to press a key to clamber over low objects or crouch into vents. It does feel a bit weird in these modern times, but it does work. Speaking of controls, believe it or not, I originally wanted to play this game on the Wii U since I bought it years ago. The game is interesting, with you using the gamepad as the map, inventory, and so on, but let's be real. The gamepad is unwieldy to hold for a game like this. I can use the gamepad for games like platformers, but when you are playing what could eventually possibly be a frantic zombie shooter, it just doesn't work very well. After maybe an hour or so, I decided just to get the game on PC and be done with it, as I still wanted to review the game. Zombie seems like it could be a fun game, but it just failed to hook me in long term. It has an interesting, shall we say, life mechanic. The game has enough blood that gushes from bashed heads, and heads may explode when shot. But when I got to a mission where I had to find various notes around the world with no indication on where they were at, I just lost all motivation of continuing. And when this happens, I count the game as not that fun and shove it back on the proverbial shelf to collect virtual dust. I may come back to it at some point, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon. A slow zombie game isn't always bad, as when done right, having a much more methodical approach to surviving can still be fun. But Zombie just doesn't hold up. At least not to me. Final score? 3 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.